It was a chilly, quiet night in a small town in rural Alaska when everything changed. A huge boom echoed through the woods, shaking the windows of the homes in the town. The sound was so loud it seemed to come from deep within the forest. The townspeople were terrified. No one knew what had caused the explosion, and the thought of venturing into the dark woods alone was too scary for anyone to even think about. Everyone was afraid, except for Kevin. He was just a regular 14-year-old kid, but he was known for his curiosity. Kevin had always wanted to explore the world beyond the town, and this mysterious noise was exactly the kind of thing he loved to figure out. While everyone else was too frightened to go into the woods, Kevin was determined to find out what had caused the explosion. His heart raced with excitement and curiosity, but also with a little fear. He had heard the stories of dangerous animals in the woods, the howling wolves, and the freezing temperatures that made the winters so deadly. Yet, despite all these warnings, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that something amazing was waiting for him in the forest. The townspeople told him it was crazy to go alone, especially at this time of year when the temperature dropped so low at night. But Kevin wasn't scared. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a strange pull to find out what had happened. After all, no one else was going to do it, so it had to be him. He decided to go. He packed his backpack with food, water, a flashlight, and a warm jacket, and the next morning he set off on his journey into the wilderness. The first couple of days were hard. The cold air cut through his clothes like a knife, and the forest was dark and eerie. The wind howled through the trees, and every night Kevin heard strange sounds, footsteps in the snow, the distant cry of a wolf, and the rustling of leaves. Every creak and snap of the branches above him made him jump, but Kevin didn't turn back. He was determined to discover what had caused the explosion. By the third day, Kevin was starting to feel the strain. He was tired, cold, and alone. He had been walking for hours every day, and the harsh weather was beginning to take its toll. His fingers were numb, his legs felt like lead, and he was starting to wonder if maybe he should just head back home. But then, on the fourth day, everything changed. While hiking through the thick trees, Kevin noticed something unusual on the ground. It was metal, shiny, and scattered across the forest floor. He knelt down and examined the pieces. They were jagged, like they had been torn off of something much larger. Kevin's eyes widened in excitement. These pieces didn't look like anything he'd seen before. They seemed too polished and strong to be random debris. Kevin knew that whatever they came from, it wasn't a regular object. As he followed the trail of metal parts, Kevin realized that they were leading him somewhere. He was getting closer to the source of the explosion. His heart pounded as he hurried, eager to find out what was at the end of the trail. The more he looked around, the more pieces of metal he found, some caught in tree branches, others half buried in the snow. It was as if the forest was hiding something huge. Kevin knew this was what he had been searching for. The pieces of metal could only mean one thing. Something big had crashed in the woods. Finally, after walking for what felt like hours, Kevin pushed through a group of thick trees and saw it. His jaw dropped in disbelief. There, lying in the forest, was a massive rocket. The sight was almost too much for Kevin to comprehend. How could something like this land in the middle of nowhere? The rocket was huge, at least 20 feet tall and about 15 feet wide. The metal body was bent and scratched, as if it had fallen from the sky. But it wasn't completely destroyed. It had crashed hard, but most of it was still intact. Kevin's heart raced. This had to be the source of the explosion he'd heard. Kevin circled the rocket, inspecting it from every angle. He could see burn marks on the outer surface, signs that the rocket had been in space and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. It was covered with soot, but the structure itself seemed mostly fine. Kevin couldn't understand how this was possible. The crash should have destroyed it, yet it still stood tall in the woods. As Kevin thought about the possibilities, a question kept gnawing at him. Why hadn't anyone else discovered it? This was a huge rocket, and no one seemed to have noticed that it had crashed. Kevin considered calling for help, but then another thought crossed his mind. What if no one was supposed to know about this rocket? What if it was something that wasn't supposed to be found? His curiosity got the best of him, and he decided to investigate further. Kevin walked around the rocket, trying to find a way inside. The metal was thick, and there were no obvious doors or windows. He looked closely for any markings or logos that might tell him where it had come from, but there were none. The rocket looked like it had been built to withstand anything. As Kevin searched, he noticed something strange. On the back of the rocket, there was a small door. It was bent out of shape from the crash, and part of it was open. Kevin thought that maybe he could fit through the gap. His heart raced with excitement and a bit of fear. What if there was something dangerous inside? What if there was still someone inside? Kevin hesitated. It could be dangerous. What if the rocket had a gas leak or some other hidden danger? But his curiosity overpowered his fear. He had to know. If he didn't go inside, he would never find out what was really going on. So, after a moment of hesitation, Kevin decided to take the risk. Kevin spent the next few minutes looking around for something to help him open the door more. He found a long metal pipe among the wreckage of the rocket. He grabbed it, thinking it would be the perfect tool to pry the door open. Kevin knew it was risky, but he couldn't stop now. He pushed the pipe into the gap and applied pressure, trying to bend the door further. With a loud creak, the door finally gave way, and Kevin was able to slip inside. The inside of the rocket was dark and cold. Kevin's phone flashlight illuminated the narrow hallway ahead. He carefully crawled forward, the walls of the rocket pressing in on him from both sides. The air smelled stale, and Kevin's heart pounded as he wondered what he would find inside. Was there someone here, or was the rocket empty? Kevin crawled through tight spaces, careful not to bump into anything sharp. The rocket had been squashed in the crash, and the interior was much smaller than it had been before. It was hard to move, and there were jagged edges sticking out from the walls. Finally, after what seemed like forever, Kevin reached the end of the corridor. He could see a door ahead, and he knew that whatever answers he was looking for would be behind it. Kevin pushed open the door and stepped into a small room. It was nothing like he had expected. There were no seats, no astronaut's gear, and no advanced equipment. Instead, there was a small control panel with buttons and lights. Kevin frowned. This didn't look like a rocket designed for people. In fact, it looked like a rocket that could only be used for something else. Kevin looked around, searching for clues about what the rocket was for. He spotted a few flags with the American symbol on them and noticed the name and model number of the rocket printed on the walls. He quickly took a picture of the name with his phone, eager to look it up later. Then, Kevin stepped out of the rocket and tried to get a signal on his phone. When he finally found a spot with enough signal, Kevin quickly Googled the rocket's name. He was eager to find out what it had been used for. When the search results came up, Kevin couldn't believe what he read. This rocket wasn't meant to carry astronauts. It was a satellite launcher designed to send satellites into space. Kevin read more about it, discovering that rockets like this one often fell into the ocean after completing their mission. Sometimes they crashed on land, causing damage, but they were meant to be harmless. Kevin had never imagined that he would find something like this in the middle of the Alaskan woods. Kevin immediately contacted the local authorities and reported his discovery. They thanked him for the information and promised to investigate further. Days later, Kevin received a call from the U.S. government. They asked him about what he had found, and Kevin told them the whole story. They weren't angry with him, and in fact, they were grateful that he had found the rocket. As a thank you, the government gave Kevin a generous reward for his help. Kevin couldn't believe how his simple curiosity had led him to uncover such an incredible secret. What started as a small adventure had turned into an experience he would never forget. The mysterious rocket was no longer a mystery, and Kevin was proud of himself for taking the risk and finding the answers. If you liked Kevin's adventure, make sure to hit the like button. Don't forget to share this story with your friends who would love an exciting mystery like this. And for more amazing adventures and real-life stories, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. You'll find new stories that inspire, entertain, and get your imagination going.